Now we're going into the curate part of our forum today. And we're going to actually start off with Robin Eady, who is a registered nurse, and she's going to be talking about clinical trials.
Everybody, let's dance! This song was a song that was the anthem for a 17-year-old boy who was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia in 1967. His name was Eric Lund, and I don't know if you've read the book Eric. Any of you boomers out there? I'm a boomer. I know Kapoor is too. He may try to pretend he's not, but he is. And at the time he was diagnosed, the cure rate, or the survival rate, I should say, was 10%. Today, because of clinical trials, it's 90%, 90. So you can see the difference that clinical trials can make in cancer. Oh, I need to go back now, hold on. This is a patient of Dr. Udd who wanted to go on to a phase 1 clinical trial. I work with phase 1 studies quite a bit. This cystoscopy tool is kind of okay, and I think I'm okay. And she was quite vocal about why she chose to go on a study and about trying to help other people. She wanted her name out there, and I'll just quote from one of the publications that she was in. She had metastatic breast cancer, and she had gone through all standard lines of treatment, but she wanted to keep fighting. She wasn't ready to stop. She wanted to live. And she said, and I quote, "He told me there was still hope of prolonging my life if I was willing to meet with a team of research specialists who were experimenting with a new drug developed in the United States that showed promising results in the treatment of cancer." And she then went on to say, "I feel so privileged to know that even if my life expectancy ends prematurely, I have played an integral part in testing a drug that will hopefully stop the growth of cancer for untold thousands in future years." So I've worked in clinical trials with cancer patients for 26 years now, and in clinical trials for 19. I've probably put on around 1,000 patients onto studies. And believe me, I'm always there to fight for the patients. I think that's one of the main things the clinical trial nurses will do. And we'll try to make it easy for you, easy to get to the appointments, try to combine that extra blood test. You don't have to drive in for an extra day just for that lab test. There's a lot of things that we do to try to make your journey easier. We do have to function, however, within a regulatory framework. And this, oops, what happened to the, okay. So this is a Health Canada slide, and this, oops, sorry. This is a Health Canada slide that just goes through the regulatory amendments that occurred to Division 5 of the Food and Drugs Regulations Act. Phase 1 to 3 trials must follow the regulations in their entirety. Phase 4 are exempt from certain regulations. So what has to happen when a company wants to market a new drug? They have to file a clinical trial application, and that's required for human clinical trials involving drugs not authorized for sale in Canada, or for trials involving marketed drugs where the proposed use of the drug is outside of the drug identification number. And an NOL is then sent by Health Canada, which is a no objection letter. And then what they're saying is they reviewed it all and it's okay to start the clinical trial. Part of the things that are submitted with this application is a protocol, informed consent, investigator's brochure. Go back. Information about the drug properties, toxicology, information about the the data with animals. Of course, the informed consent document has to be submitted with that as well. How much are you disclosing to your patients? Is that robust? Is that going through all the risks? Is this a study that could actually benefit the patient? So once Health Canada, they have 30 days to review it, and once they've reviewed it, then they will give the approval, either yay or nay, or they may give some advice and want things changed a little bit. And then the sponsor is required to do that. And let me add that if say, an investigator-initiated study from, say, funds raised at Kidney Cancer Canada or some kind of a cancer fundraiser, if the doctors want to run one, a small one, they have to file this as well if they're trying to get a drug approved. Once the approval is obtained, the sponsor may sell or import a drug for a clinical trial if approval is obtained, and the ethics board approval is obtained. So ethics board approval is extremely important with clinical trials, and they're a group, and the composition of ethics boards is defined by this Division 5 of by Health Canada as to who has to be on it. There have to be some lay people, there have to be some experts. It's a whole group of people, and if the investigator who's trying to put the study through is on the ethics board, he has to abstain from the voting, and there has to be a record of his abstention from it. So the ethics board is extremely important with the running of clinical trials. In Ontario, we're lucky because we have the Ontario Cancer Research Ethics Board. So once a center gets approval, one of the centers will take a lead, say if Dr. Kapoor wanted to put one through, and he would be the provincial lead, so he would do all the kind of legwork up front, and then Princess Margaret could jump on, and some of the other centers who wanted to run the study. It just simplifies things and speeds things along a bit to have the one ethics board. Switch. The U.S. FDA, if you want to run a study through the states, and some of our studies up here use this because we're running studies that have originated in the states, they have to submit the 1571 form, which is the IND, the application for an investigational drug, which is called an IND application. The physician then has to fill out another form called a 1572. And the FDA has 30 days to review the submission as well. So it's similar to Health Canada. The amount of time it takes to develop drugs is quite astounding. You don't realize, we want to give these drugs to you guys yesterday, but the amount of time it takes to get these new drugs on board is it's quite profound and quite expensive. So I kind of wanted to cover some of that on some slides. Preclinical is usually about 3 to 6 years, and then there's a clinical trial application to use it for humans. And then the clinical development could take, for phase 1, 2, and 3, could take 6 to 7 years. And then if the information is robust and the trial results are positive, then you can do something called a new drug submission or a new drug application, depending if you're in Canada or the States. Phase 4 studies, and we're doing a lot more of those now with the immunotherapy drugs, nivolumab, pembrolizumab, ipilimumab, that sort of thing. Well, ipilimumab's out of that now, but the phase 4 studies, which is really kind of an expanded access protocol, those are becoming more common now because the companies are trying to provide the drugs to the patients, but of course there's no provincial funding for a lot of these drugs at this point in time. Yeah, I don't know why this isn't there. Okay. So just to give you a perspective on how difficult it is to get some of these drugs out, from 2008 to 2010, the phase 2 failure rate was 18%. From 2007 to 2010, the phase 3 failure rate was 50%. So 60 to 70% of phase 3 is because the drug doesn't meet the primary endpoint. So the benefit doesn't outweigh the risk to the patient. It doesn't show what it needs to show. And 70% of the drugs don't make the drug companies a lot of money because due to lack of differentiation of the drug. So if there's a whole bunch of antihypertensives out there, if there's a whole bunch of the immunotherapies out there, and now we are seeing everybody's got immunotherapy drug in the pipeline now, all the drug companies. They feel that they don't make enough money on them because of the lack of differentiation. And that drives up the cost when they first hit the market. So just to go through the backbone of what the phases of development of a drug are. Phase 1, it's first in human. And I work a lot with phase 1 drugs. I love them because it offers the patients a chance. A lot of those patients who come, or I'd say all of the patients who come into the phase 1 setting, they've exhausted all standard treatment options. But these patients still want to fight. And so our job is to get them on those studies, get those drugs for them. There's a lot of blood sampling, they're long days. It used to be maybe about 9-10 years ago, it was all about something called a QTC, which is a prolongation of the heart. So the FDA was on that bandwagon, and so was Health Canada. So we were keeping our patients 12, 14 hours sometimes after they were dosed so we could do ECGs on them. But now they've kind of gone away from that, and there's other things that they're looking at in terms of toxicity. So those are done to try to see if the drug, what the best dose of the drug is. And as a patient, make sure you ask the questions about where are they at in terms of the cohorts of that. When you go into the first cohort, you're going to be dosed at below where they saw efficacy and below where they saw toxicity in animals. So they start very low with humans and slowly build up. But to move through those different steps, it takes a while. It can take months, sometimes a year. So depending on how much time you have, you might want to look at it and think, you know what, I'm not quite ready to go into below where they saw effectiveness in animals at the particular pharmacokinetic or the particular blood level of the drug, and that's how they kind of measure it. Phase 2 studies have to do with efficacy. So out of phase 1, in some of the cancers where they saw promise or where they think these might be kind of a target, they'll move the drug into phase 2, which is really efficacy. Does it work? If they see that it does work, well, this is supposed to advance. I need my daughter to come back and help me with this. Phase 3. Is really the gold standard, and this is where they're going to try to go for marketing approval. So in our phase 3 studies, you might have a placebo control, and there's a lot of ethical issues, and there's a lot that's out now about placebo-controlled studies. Nowadays, they usually unblind, and usually more early rather than later. They used to look at the overall survival, and that was like more of a big endpoint, and they thought if you unblind and you don't capture that data for 10 years from now, that will undermine the drug. But there's a huge push from a lot of groups to not allow that to happen and to unblind them. And a lot of studies I've worked on recently, there has been unblinding, which is nice because then you can offer the drug to the patient if they're well enough, but they still have to be able to qualify through sort of the original qualifications to get the drug. And then phase 4 is expanded access and that sort of thing. So it's post-marketing. So this is something that there's a lot out in the media about clinical trials these days, and this was just on the CBC a couple weeks ago on the national about one of the oncolytic viruses that we're working with.
But from participants like cancer patient Christina Monker, a former nurse, a mother, and grandmother.
I'm very glad that I had the opportunity to participate in this trial because I know that it may contribute to better therapies that could help other people, including possible my children and grandchildren.
So how big?
So that's really why a lot of people go on to studies, is to help others. So if you have any other questions, I can go over some of the slides that we missed. There's a lot of promising studies out there now. The government's really helping to try to fund things and get these drugs available to you guys. There's also a right to try law that was passed in the States, and the Right to Try organization is trying to make sure that that more doctors are willing to prescribe some of the drugs, so they've eased off some of the legal implications and passed new laws for that. So anyways, I have more information, but I'm out of time, so see you later. Thanks.